Tonight, the Fujifilm FinePix A800. I try to sound like Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear, and all this in the 4:3 aspect ratio. The Fujifilm FinePix A800 is an 8 megapixel compact point and shoot from early to mid 2007. It was announced around January with an MSRP of $179 US. Put things in perspective, that would be at least $20 less than the cheapest new Xbox 360 at the time. So yeah, what would $179 US, roughly the equivalent of $268 in 2024 money, buy you back in 2007? Well, let's start with the 1/1.6 type or 8mm by 6mm CCD sensor and 8 to 24mm f2.8 to 5.1 motorized zoom lens. And this thing shoots JPEGs with a max dimensions of 3296 by 2472. The 35mm equivalent focal length would be 36 to 108 millimeters. The max shutter speed on this camera is 1/1600. Want to know more? You could see DP Review's overview of this camera on their website. Link in description. Additionally, Fujifilm's website still hosts the manual for this antiquated camera. Link in description as well. Now, this sort of resolution and possibly the decent enough image quality out of this sensor and lens combo and relatively inexpensive snap shooter was what ultimately led to the demise of the 135 format film. Or maybe it was also the economic calamities we faced around 2008. In really late 2023, I picked mine up at the Goodwill thrift store. In other parts of the world, a thrift store may also be known as a charity shop or an opportunity shop. For $12.99 US. Well, plus 9.3% of that in sales tax. In terms of power, I/O, and storage, we have two AA batteries. A card slot that fits either an industry standard SD card or an Olympus XD picture card. Now this Fujifilm camera also has the capabilities to transmit and receive photos via infrared to and from other similar Fujifilm cameras. We also have a mini USB port that I typically skip over and use an external card reader instead. These earlier ones can't power the camera
zoom,
or charge the batteries.
red eye reduction, picture stabilization, baby mode, auto, movie, scene position, scene position, we have options for manual, landscape, sport, night, natural light, beach, snow, fireworks, sunset, underwater, flower, party, museum, text in manual, which is really automatic with the option to override the ISO.
For best results quality-wise, you want the ISO to the lowest it'll go, which for this is 100. You also want to set the JPEG quality to fine even when Ken Rockwell says that standard or normal JPEGs are all you need. That may be true with more modern cameras. But remember, we're talking about something more antiquated, and you want to get the best quality you can get. Also, don't forget the macro flash and self-timer option buttons on what looks like the directional pad. You'll control exposure by using the flash controls and the EV comp options. On a camera like this, with a smaller sensor, I typically like to underexpose a bit. Typically in this one I've done about 1/3 EV. Older, smaller digital sensors like this require a bit of protecting the highlights. Now let's see what this thing could do near and around magic hour at the boardwalk on the day of Pi 2024. Now, the dynamic range of this old CCD isn't that great. We'll take advantage of magic hour lighting around sunset, and forcing the ISO to the lowest it'll go. It's still more than passable. The 8 megapixels of resolution this digicam has meant that the images don't have an overly dated look to them. In fact, that resolution actually exceeds what most photo sharing sites will present to you in even today. Now that means that the biggest advantage of your new iPhone's camera isn't in its 48 megapixel count, but rather in its larger sensor and its still fast aperture. The iPhone 15 Pro has a 1/1.3 type and f1.78. But really, are those specs going to make you a better photographer? Try downgrading first before you upgrade. Anyways, as we edge closer to sunset, stuff gets shaded out. Heavily in some cases. At this point, you may want to adjust the EV comp depending upon what you want to expose for, and or even start using the flash. Another thing to note is that noise creeps into the darkest parts of the shadows rather readily, even at the lowest ISO. Exposing brighter can help, but that can also mean losing the golden color of the highlights. Or perhaps even introducing a bit of motion blur. Here we see the Lady Washington again, still covered and not open for tours just yet. I'd certainly like to go tour the boat once I get a chance. Some are touting these old digicams as if they're like the next film. They're nothing like film. That being said, inbuilt imaging processing at the time is certainly less modern in tastes. It may more closely resemble older film than the image processing found in modern cameras. Well, all subjective stuff, that is. All of that would be irrelevant with RAW, but this doesn't have it. Oh yeah, and here's the obligatory photo of the welcome sign. Every photography trip either needs one or should have one. It's like the lo-fi beats in a YouTube video like this one. It's kind of mandatory in a ways. As I look down towards the dedication plaque of the welcome sign, I could see the effects of the shutter speed on the image. 1/6 of a second, frankly, doesn't cut it. Nuisance feeding of animals at the park or anywhere outdoors can get you fined by the city. So yeah, why did I even bother buying this stupid thing in the first place? Well, for one, it was the 1/1.6 times sensor, and an arrow in most cameras had a smaller 1/2.3 or 1/2.5 type sensors. Well, yeah, maybe also the fact that it was 8 megapixels helped too. I don't look highly upon cameras that use AA batteries, but this is alright. This has Fujifilm's Super CCD HR sensor, which used octagonal rather than square pixels. Supposedly it would produce better horizontal and vertical resolution at the cost of diagonal resolution. Still not quite so sure on that. But Fujifilm discontinued the use when they switched over to CMOS sensors. Now, downsides to this whole thing. I am honestly not too fond of the flash recharge times. In fact, the screen would also go blank for a couple seconds after taking a photo. And whenever you want to go get the memory card, you lose the settings. I don't like not having RAW options, but I suppose I need to temper my expectations for something that only costs $179 back in the day. But still, I will complain that the autofocus is a bit sluggish. I will complain that you're limited to JPEGs. I will complain that the aperture figures suck nowadays. Talking about a 3x zoom, 8 to 24 millimeters, f2.8 to 5.2. On a sensor smaller than that of the iPhone 15's main camera module. Though on the other hand, I'm not going to get too heartbroken should I lose something like this or break it by accident, especially when I'm basically out only 13 bucks. You lose your phone, you're out your whole life's work. It's not just 300 bucks for one of these. You have your whole life in this, and it can easily slip out of your hands when you're trying to take a picture of someone or something. Quite frankly, I don't like the over-processed look on a newer, more modern smartphone system. Additionally, it's also cheaper than film, for the most part easier to work with than film, and doesn't expose you to liquid chemicals, unlike film, when you're trying to process the photos. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I may not be getting much in the way of views, but the few, the proud, the loyal. And maybe next time I'll be taking a look at a red camera.